Now this question here, this was the one that essentially divided up the candidates at the Nat 5 level. There were some candidates who looked at this question, thought about it, sought the facts and managed to get through it. There were some that looked at it and just thought, holy heck, what is going on here? Now this kind of question here, without even thinking about it and just looking at the scenario, involves circles, properties of circles, and Pythagoras Theorem. And this can all be recognised by looking at the shape of the setup here. So obviously it's got a couple of circles here, and you could tell it's going to involve some sort of circle property, and it's got a length here that you know and a length here that you know by reading the information, and you can use it to calculate a missing side. So it's going to involve lots of different things that we've covered over the course of the year, but we have to be able to use it and do them to interpret the scenario. So, overall scenario shows a picture of a cartoon snowman, which is represented here. The head is a small circle with a diameter of 15. The body is a part of a larger circle, the centre of which is at the point T. It lies in the circumference of the small circle. A and B lie in the circumferences of both circles. Calculate the height of the snowman. So for the height of the snowman, I obviously want to go from the point C down to the point D. That's exactly where I need to be. Now, I know from C to T. So if I put that point there as my point T, I know that length there because that length is the diameter of the small circle, which is 15 centimetres. What I need to calculate is this length here, the T to D. Now that T to D, because T is the centre of this circle, represents the radius of this bigger circle. So I need to somehow figure out the radius of this bigger circle. Well, if I look at what I mentioned earlier, this part here, I know the length of the line S to T. This S to T, because S is the centre of the small circle, is the radius, which is 7.5 centimetres. But I also know that A to S is the exact same thing. So A to S is also 7.5. If I think about the way the circles are laid out and I think about all the various properties of them, I know that this point here from A, which is on the edge of the circle, to the point T is the equivalent of the radius. So this length here will then be the equivalent of this length here. If I can figure this out, I know this and I can then get the entire height of the snowman. Well, the first thing we need to do is marshal the facts into a clear and distinct diagram. So if I set this up as a little right angled triangle here, so there's my right angle, and I set it up with the points A, S and T, the side that I want here, I'm going to call R to represent the radius, and I know that the sides A to S and S to T are both 7.5 centimetres. What I can do now is, because it's a right angle triangle and I'm finding a side, is I can use Pythagoras Theorem to find that side. Using Pythagoras, I know that R squared is going to equal 7.5 squared plus 7.5 squared. What that then means is I can figure out that R is equal to the square root of 7.5 squared plus the other 7.5 squared. So 7.5 squared plus 7.5 squared is 112.5. So I then know that R is equal to the square root of 112.5. Plug that into a calculator and you get that R is equal to 10.6, and then numbers continuing on. So I know then that the radius, T to D, is equal to 10.6 centimetres. So I've got this section here now. I know this section. To get the total height, C to D, I add them together. So I then can say, fine, so I know C to D is equal to the height C to T, which is 15, plus the other part, the T to D, which is 10.6. So I know then that it's equal to 25.6 centimetres. Don't forget the units. Now a question like this, we have to be able to look at the diagram and interpret it. I had to be able to look at this diagram and interpret the properties. So for example, knowing that C to D was the diameter, so T to S, S to A, they were both the radii. I had to remember that T to D was the radius of the bigger circle because T was the centre. So because I knew that and A was on the edge, I then knew that T to A was also the edge. If I'd set it up the other way and gone S to B, I would know that T to B was the radius. So I could have set up a second right angle triangle here. I'd have got the exact same result at the end. So it was then a case of calculating this and adding the two heights together. A question like this, we have to be able to look at the scenario, interpret it, extract the information, and then figure out the answer to the solution from there. Once we've done it, we then communicate that solution effectively. So I say fine, so my height C to D is equal to 25.6 centimetres. So the snowman is 25.6 centimetres in this picture.